All right, good morning, everyone. I am Lauren DeYoung-Schulman. I'll be guiding us through our really exciting Customer Experience Summit programming today. We've got a few folks still logging on, so I want to take a few minutes to cover some housekeeping notes, and then we'll get started. First, just as a reminder, today's event is recorded. You'll receive it afterwards. You'll get a link. Feel free to share it with any colleagues, friends, or others that you think should hear our content today. And second, at the end of the event, as a piece de resistance, we'll be sharing the link to the Government for the People report and agency profiles that we've worked so hard on with many of you over the last several months. Next, we definitely encourage you to participate. A couple different ways to do so. We've got the chat function, which many of you are familiar with on Zoom. If you have a question at any point during the proceedings, please feel free to use the Q&A button, which should be at the bottom of your Zoom menu. And we'll have opportunities to ask our panel of agency participants, as well as our keynote questions at the end of their sessions. We also have a hashtag for those of you who are on social media, hashtag GovCX2021, if you want to join in the conversation there. And finally, if you have any technical questions during the event, please feel free to send them directly to Kara Glancy, who is our producer of this event, or just post them in the chat and we'll get you assistance as soon as we can. So without further ado, once again, thank you to all of you for joining us today. This is a great crowd. I'm going to turn it over to my boss, Max Steyer, CEO of the Partnership for Public Service, to welcome us to the event. Max?
Hello, everybody. Lauren, thank you so much for your wonderful leadership. Lauren has been a phenomenal addition to the partnership. She leads our research work and so much more, and is both a national security expert and someone who deeply believes that good ideas are only meaningful if you can get them done. And one of the areas that she's added tremendous value is around customer experience. Welcome to everybody who has joined us here. We have a great group, both of participants and then also of federal leaders who you will hear from. And as Lauren suggested, we would love this to be as interactive as possible. We are doing this with our wonderful partners at Accenture Federal Services. We have been at the issue of customer experience for several years with them. This is a passion project and one that we are committed to over time, and could not be doing this without Accenture. And in particular, I want to thank Kathy Conrad and Chris Zinner for their amazing leadership on this work, and they have been tremendous partners. From the partnership, you met Lauren already. We also have Elizabeth Byers, Nadia Shitava, Ife Shula, Ellen Perlman, Audrey Fun, Tim Arcadis, and Kara, who you heard is doing the technical work here. It is the proverbial village from the partnership side, and all wonderful colleagues who are committed to trying to help, and hopefully you will enjoy the work that you've seen from them. I can't help but think when we talk about customer experience, about our Service to America Medals, our SAMEs program. For those of you who were not able to either see it in person or on video, please do go to our website, our Service to America Medals website, and you'll be able to see the video. I say this because it's what it's all about. The SAMEs is about recognizing extraordinary federal public servants for the amazing contributions that they are making to the American people. And their stories really, to my mind, are the reason why this all matters. We live in a world with many, many risks, many challenges, and our federal government is really the front line in addressing those issues. And it's the people in government that are making the biggest difference. And we need to make sure that their stories are told effectively and that the work of government is understood by the American people. Helping government earn the trust of the American people is a big piece of why we do this work. The annual customer experience report that we produce and the summit that we do is really intended to help build capability inside government. And we think that by doing so, we will improve the public's trust in a critical democratic institution, and ultimately ensure that we are better addressing the many problems that we faced. We've been at this work, as I mentioned, for several years. We've outlined path forward in terms of the kinds of work that we believe can and needs to happen. Part of it is really just identifying the amazing work that's already occurring inside government, the classic bright spot analysis, and creating community around good ideas. You're going to hear from many leaders in government today that are doing exceptional, innovative work that really, in our view, is best in class. This is an issue that is obviously evergreen. It matters for every administration, but bluntly, even more so now, both because of the risk side that I mentioned, but also because of the opportunity side. We have an investment being made by our government on the civilian side, larger than at any point, certainly in my lifetime, and ensuring that those resources are deployed effectively to the best end to ensure that they are helping people and helping people in a way that is demonstrating the value of equity, something that this administration has very clearly identified as a priority, is fundamental to success. Again, I think this is a moment of intense opportunity, and I'm excited about the ability of this work to help the administration do this important work better. With this, we have such a wonderful program to come. I am going to end my opening here and turn it over to our wonderful partners at Accenture. In particular, I get to introduce Elaine Beeman, who is the Senior Managing Director for Accenture Federal Services. Elaine, thank you again for your great and continued partnership. We're excited by this work and look forward to what's to come. All yours.
Thanks, Max, so much. Good morning, everyone, and I'm super happy to be here with you. Welcome to our 2021 Federal Customer Experience Summit. Accenture Federal Services has been working with a partnership, as Max said, for the past several years to advance customer experience practices in government. Together, we've had the opportunity to engage with CX leaders across government, share leading practices, and collaborate on key challenges and opportunities. Our annual CX report and agency profiles bring together these insights and best practices to provide a path forward for all of government. At Accenture, we have the privilege of working with public and private sector leaders who have made improving customer experience a strategic priority. We've seen firsthand that a relentless focus on the customer and their experience delivers better results, advancing agency missions, improving impacts for citizens. Ultimately, excellent customer service will strengthen trust and confidence in government. Today's focus on increasing equity and reducing barriers to government services is an especially critical step in the evolution of government services. An inclusive approach is critical to improving experience for all the people government serves and is core to how we work at Accenture. I'm excited to share our vision for a more inclusive, equitable, and customer-centric government. Today's report provides actionable steps agencies can take to bring this vision to life, building on the solid foundation that's been established over the last few years. We've seen that through the pandemic, what can happen when agencies reimagine what's possible, putting customer first and leveraging digital services to meet urgent American needs. And now we're at an inflection point. We have a real opportunity to build on this momentum and take bold steps to create lasting transformation in this area. Accenture is proud to help launch this landmark report, and I hope you find today's conversations informative, thought-provoking, and inspiring as you continue along your own customer experience journey. And with that, I will now turn things over to Lauren and Kathy, who are going to present this year's findings. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Elaine and Max. Aoife and Kara, can I ask you to put our slides up? All right, so for those who joined a little bit late, as a reminder, I'm Lauren DeYoung-Schulman. I lead research here at the partnership and have been so excited to lead, or rather co-lead this project with my colleague, Kathy Conrad, who is the Director of Digital Government at Accenture Federal Services. As a reminder, if folks are interested in joining the conversation on Twitter, GovCX2021 is our hashtag. So just to give you a bit of background, as Max and Elaine alluded to, for the past 2 years, the partnership and Accenture have been documenting government's progress on customer experience through our Government for the People report. And we've told the story of how federal leaders have built a solid foundation of customer experience practice, as well as a lot of incredible examples of excellence and innovation. Going up to the next slide, please, Kara. This year's report identifies how federal agencies can harness this momentum and to deliver customer experience that is seamless, intuitive, and purposeful. And as Max and Elaine said, we think that this timing is absolutely critical. The Biden administration has made customer experience a priority for building trust and addressing equity issues that limit access to government services. Our latest research finds that the US government is confronting a moment of truth that is both a crisis and, we hope, an opportunity. The challenges facing the nation and the expectations for government continue to grow. But trust in our public institutions is at an all-time low. This is not just an ambient worry. We are seeing the effects of lack of trust in government in public health, as well as in the health of our democratic institutions. This is a problem that needs to be addressed, as well as persistent gaps in access to critical government services that have become far more evident. We believe that the Biden administration has the opportunity, and we think they are more than ready to take advantage of it, to reset this relationship with the public, with a fundamental shift that places its customer, the public, at the center of its work. Next slide, please. Our research found two systemic challenges in confronting that are confronting federal customer experience leaders today. And I know so many of you feel this in your work. First, satisfaction with individual services, whether it be student loans or getting a passport or applying for citizenship, hasn't translated consistently into greater and sustainable trust in government. The direct feedback that customers are providing to government through the OMB A11 feedback that many of your agencies are providing, as well as some partnership public opinion research, finds that individual positive experiences with government are not yet building sustained trust in programs and agencies or in government overall, to the extent that one would expect or hope. And second, the way that government has been designed and delivered for the public has not consistently addressed real and perceived inequity in service delivery. It is challenging to build trust when you don't believe that your neighbor is going to receive the same treatment, or if you don't think government is listening or working for you and your family, a sentiment that right now the majority of Americans feel. Recognizing these challenges, the Biden administration, as the Biden administration seems to be doing, is a major win. But generating lasting change is going to require the federal government to address the root causes impacting customer experience, not just the symptoms. What do I mean by that? This means embracing that trust in government is a long-term relationship, not a transaction or a couple of transactions. Trust is built over time, like in any relationship, when the public feels that government is designed, delivering, and proactively working for the people, not reactively sending them to a help desk or using lists of customer complaints to generate their to-do list. It also means understanding and emphasizing the needs of those who most require services or who have been historically overlooked in order to best meet their needs. And this is the subject, as so many of you know, of the Biden administration's first executive order on racial equity. The Partnership and Accenture's Government for the People report offers a roadmap to empower federal leaders to deliver simple, consistent, purposeful, and secure experiences with government. All customers across all their journeys, delivering on the promise of government for the people. And with this roadmap, we have 4 key recommendations. And I'll let Kathy start to explain those. Kathy?
Thank you, Lauren. Next slide, please. So as Lauren said, our report focuses on 4 key approaches for enabling agencies to move beyond incremental improvements to achieve lasting change. First, agencies should conduct comprehensive, inclusive customer research, including underrepresented populations and communities across all points of service and service channels. Start by determining what you need to know rather than relying on the information you already have. That will enable agencies to identify gaps that are critical to improving experience, access, and equity. And listening to and considering the needs of all eligible customers, instead of just those you can most easily reach, will reveal barriers to equity and access that otherwise may not be visible. For example, several agencies have found that documentation requirements can preclude some people from being able to verify their identity and take advantage of online accounts or self-service capabilities that in today's world people expect. Agencies, including SSA and IRS, are now piloting solutions that offer more equitable access. And establishing inclusive design teams will enable agencies to better identify and address these barriers and unconscious bias. Diverse perspectives, experience, and ideas will also lead to better solutions. We recommend that agencies analyze customer feedback and data to generate insights about specific populations and customer mindsets, rather than generalizing about average customers. This will help uncover issues that diminish experience, equity, and access. These often complex issues won't be solved by making incremental improvements around the edges. As Lauren noted, agencies should dig into root causes to develop lasting solutions. A common challenge for agencies is how to reach hard to reach or how to engage with hard to reach populations, particularly those that may be skeptical, or distrustful of government. Building partnerships with trusted stakeholders, including local community-based organizations, can be especially effective to increase engagement, obtain feedback, and build trust. And using non-traditional customer listening channels, including social media, can also help reach customers where they are. Next slide, please. Second, we recommend agencies focus more on overall customer journeys rather than simply improving individual interactions and touch points. People come to government with a specific purpose. They shouldn't need a roadmap to navigate getting the service or information they need. Services and service channels should be integrated and modernized to deliver seamless, intuitive, and purposeful experience within and across agencies. And this is especially important for priority life events, and we expect to see more focus on those, both those that are planned, like retirement or starting a business, and those that are not, like food insecurity or recovering from a disaster. Our research showed that during the pandemic, many agencies expanded service delivery, adding self-service, online, and other capabilities. Yet many agencies continue to struggle to provide consistent, accurate information across all their channels. People should be able to complete their journeys without having to jump from one channel to another. They should have confidence that they can get complete, timely information from whatever channel they choose. This is critical to building trust and delivering equitable, seamless experience. We further recommend that agencies make eligibility and documentation requirements for intersecting programs consistent, eliminating the need for duplicate data submissions. Data should be securely shared. It should be used to fuel intelligent systems that enable agencies to anticipate and proactively deliver services. To make that more possible, current policies and regulations that restrict data sharing should be reviewed and revised using a customer-centric lens. Agencies should use customer feedback and data to better understand people's actual experience, behavior, and mindsets, such as why people abandon tasks, make repeated calls, or trust one service channel more than another. These insights should also be shared across relevant programs and services, including with partner agencies. They should be used to improve and unify overall experience rather than kept in service silos to make isolated changes to specific points of interaction. Customer-centric collaboration is critical to integrating and unifying experience across customer journeys. Next slide, please. And Lauren, I'll turn it back to you for the third and fourth recommendations.
Absolutely. So the third challenge we identified that so many of you have experienced in your work is that many customers face excessive barriers to government services. And many federal agencies do not fully consider administrative burden or do not measure it as they're designing services overall. So administrative burden, what's that for those of you to whom this is a new term? This is defined by some friends of the partnership and Accenture, Don Moynihan, as the cost that people encounter when they search for information about public services, comply with rules or requirements, or experience stress or stigma that comes from such encounter. These barriers emerge due to politics, policies, bureaucracy, security, often very well-intentioned, but ultimately because government services have been set up from the perspective and preferences of government, which makes sense, but they're for customers. Kathy gave the great example of identity verification earlier as a major administrative burden and hurdle that impacts many customers' access to services. Other burdens might include language barriers, if certain services are only available in certain languages, or the need to access a lawyer in order to access a service, or the requirements that are pretty small, like a requirement for getting in-person physical signatures versus doing things online. What we recommend based on our research is focusing on the full range of customers, all of them, possible ones, current ones, and so on, when designing and delivering services by using human-centered design practice and measuring the impact of efforts to reduce administrative burden. Good news is that recent updates to OMB's A11 guidance and that first racial equity executive order that I mentioned have these ideas embedded within them. These policies, we think, offer a generational opportunity for remarkable progress on service equity. But policy and intent are only the first steps to this process. The work of centering the customer and equity is not going to be undertaken in just a few announcements or policies, but it's going to require long-term change management. We offer several recommendations in our report in this vein, and I'll mention a few of them. The first one, this is going to resonate with so many of you, is designing with the customer, not for the customer. And then second, to recognize the historical context of government engagement, particularly with marginalized and underserved populations. Third, to use evidence when evaluating administrative burden. That example earlier about identity verification. Understand whether or not those requirements you're putting on customers are actually having the impact of minimizing fraud or improper payments that you want them to. And is the cost actually worthwhile? Minimize the requirement for customers to seek help from a third party. Or when it's necessary, make sure that that third party requirement is recognized. And the last two, design business models that address outcomes tied to mission impact, not outputs. It's not the number of calls to a call center, but the results that you see for customers. And finally, identify opportunities for proactive customer engagement, so you can offer assistance and information before customers need it. Next slide, please. This is our last set of recommendations, something we've heard from so many agencies as we've interviewed you over the years, is that many agencies absolutely have the right customer experience policies and mindsets, but lack the organizational structure, talent, and technology to design the customer-focused services that they want to from the beginning. The solution is obvious. We've got to elevate this as a priority. Agencies should be able to incorporate customer experience and equity principles into their core processes and functions, reviewing talent, tech, strategy, and leadership accountability. To set themselves up for success, we need to invest in a dedicated workforce, not as secondary functions, not as volunteers, but a dedicated workforce through human-centered design, user experience, equity, data, and evaluation, whether that be through hiring, contracting, professional development, or partnerships. We need to make it routine to add customer experience elements into strategic planning and learning agendas, as well as evaluation, budgeting, and overall agency governance processes. It's got to be a part of the center of this work. And finally, we need to elevate the responsibility for customer experience outcomes to agency leaders and use the President's Management Council and other forums for accountability. These findings and more are found in our recent report that we'll share in the chat shortly, with detailed lists of what agencies should be doing and should not be doing to reach these objectives, as well as profiles of so many of your agencies detailing the challenges you're facing, as well as so many of your successes. I think we all agree that this should not be a sideshow in government. This is why we're all here, to live up to the promise of government for the people. We think that government can be successful in tackling the big challenges it's facing only with the public's trust and only with a fundamental reset of a relationship it has with the people it serves. And our report provides a blueprint for how government should be approaching customer experience in this new era. Final slide. So there are a host of experts and agencies and advocates who have supported this important work. I want to thank them so much for participating in that. We've invited several to speak with you today about their individual perspectives. And I'm excited. So first, if you'll see in the slide, we've got our our report link there. I encourage you to go see that. And next, I want to introduce my colleague, Mark Lerner, who leads the partnership work on government innovation. He will lead a star-studded panel of agency leaders in customer experience today. And as a final housekeeping note, as Mark comes and our panel comes on screen, I very much encourage you all to use the Q&A function to ask questions during the panel discussion. To submit a question, just use that Q&A box. You can also join the conversation on Twitter at GovCX2021. Thank you so much. Mark?
Thanks, Lauren. We've got a great set of panelists for our conversation today, and I welcome my panelists to come onto the video right now. I'll be kicking us off with some questions of my own, then I'll be opening it up to audience questions. So for the audience, please feel free to submit those using the Q&A feature in Zoom directly. So now let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. First up, we have here Jean Moody Williams joining us, who is the Deputy Director for the Center for Clinical Standards and Quality at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Jean, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Next, we have Commissioner Dave Gooder, Commissioner for Trademarks at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Dave, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks.
And finally, we have Jose Bonilla, the Executive Director for Traveler Engagement at TSA. Jose, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here. Appreciate it.
So I'm going to start with a question for all of you, but I'll actually have Commissioner Gooder start us off with the answer here. So one of the core recommendations that you just heard from our report is to build this seamless and equitable customer journey. And this draws inspiration from the Biden administration's first executive order on racial equity. How has this new policy, that executive order, and the broader desire to build equitable customer journeys spurred new thinking with you and your organization?
That's a good question. I mean, I think every group is different, and you touched on a clarification I just want to make sure we're talking about here is I'm the commissioner for trademarks, so the Patent and Trademark Office has a patent side and a trademark side, and I run the trademark side. So I'm not necessarily speaking for the whole agency, but our unit of it, which is about 1/10 of the size of the patent side. I think what the order did was help ensure that this is on the minds of our people. And in a lot of cases, in our particular instance, we recognize the executive order recognized something we'd already been doing and thinking. I came to the agency in March, literally 2 weeks before we shut down. So a lot of this has been new learning for me, but from what I'm seeing is a lot of this already was sort of in people's thoughts. But what it did was it really bumped it to be spoken, seen, talked about. It's on the agenda more consistently, and that's a positive thing.
Thank you for that. And Jean, how about yourself?
So yeah, customer service has been longstanding at CMS. I've had the opportunity to work with many of you over the years. And of course, equity and support of the underserved community is extremely important. It begins, of course, with leadership at the top. And we've spoken about the president's executive order, but our administrator also just recently released the CMS strategic plan. And within that, there were 6 pillars. The first one was equity. And she often says it's the first question we ask, not the last. And so reaching our customers at all levels, extremely important. And as was mentioned, I think during this COVID pandemic, it just longstanding disparities were just exacerbated and pointed out the need that we have to find a way to be more effective in bringing the voices of all of our customers on in order to really address the issues at hand. Thank you.
I love that. The first question, not the last. That's excellent. Mr. Bonilla, how about yourself?
I agree. I agree with my colleagues wholeheartedly, especially, speaking for TSA, our passenger journey focus really began several years ago when we focused on establishing a new journey for that passenger in coordination with our air carrier partners and airport authorities, to make it a more touchless, automated process. And we're talking about the executive order that really has reinforced TSA's culture and our vision. This is something that our administrator, David Pekoski, was very focused on. As a matter of fact, last year in 2020, he launched the Inclusion Action Committee, which I'm proud to say I was one of 9 executives selected to serve on this Inclusion Action Committee with strictly a focus on looking at TSA and identifying what can we do better. What can we do to ensure that we are a fair and equitable organization? And really, it's been about a 1.5-year project, and we've identified several recommendations for our leadership to consider, and many of which have already been actioned, and we will continue to action. He did not want to wait to action some of these recommendations. I think the message is, it really starts from within, identifying what areas you have to focus on. And one of our 3 strategic areas of focus is commit to people. And it's not just committing to people internally. If you focus on your culture, enhancing your culture, it must transform to the traveling public because they are a part of this equation.
And to build on one of the elements that you brought up there, your organization, TSA, and the other organizations as well, you've all pursued remarkable innovations in service design for your customers. And in doing so, as we heard earlier, reduced administrative burden. You just mentioned sort of the touchless experience and focusing on the customer quite a bit. How did you actually go about making those types of innovative changes, and how might that experience sort of inform what's ahead of you?
Well, it's identifying where you want to go. Where are you from a technology capability perspective? Where are you from a budgetary perspective? And most importantly, where are you from a mission, a risk perspective? At the end of the day, our job is to still ensure that aircraft take off and they land safely. And we continue to do that. And it's not easy, but, I think the industry's needs, passengers' needs change over time. And so the thought was, how do we taking in the survey results that we receive from passengers, from our own employees, what do we have to do to further streamline the system? And that's where the breadth and thought of touchless. How can we get to as touchless as possible? We work hand in hand with CBP on biometric piloting biometric capability throughout the country. That is going to better serve the traveling public. And I think most importantly was involving passengers into the fold. Because not every one technology or capability is going to serve. I think Karen was talking about this earlier about, the one of the findings of the report was you just can't focus on one group of individuals. We touch just about everybody. Passengers with disabilities, medical conditions, all races, ethnicities, and genders. And so we had to evolve and adapt to that. So as we build requirements for technology, we have to bring these individuals in to help us build those requirements. That's how we have formulated, moving towards a touchless experience. And then the pandemic further reiterated that for us. It really, hit the nail on the head for us, saying, we are going in the right direction. This is something that we need to continue to do.
Absolutely. Jean, I'll pass it to you in case you have any reactions to that, or an answer to the question as well, in case of how did you actually go about making those changes to your own organization?
So I think it's important, as you mentioned, and was previously mentioned, to think about the customer experience holistically. So just to set the stage a little bit, of course, CMS ensures that about 146 million people have health coverage that works for their life circumstances, which are varied. As you can imagine, we regulate and engage over 76,000 healthcare facilities across the country. And with that, we impact more than 17 million physicians, clinicians, and other healthcare workers. And in one way or another, we have to establish relationships and trust with all of those people because they're all a part of the same system. They interact with each other. And you can imagine if we have one message for the beneficiary and they go to their clinicians and they hear another message. which, you know, well, Medicare made us do this. And so we're constantly trying to ensure that we not only reach out to the beneficiaries, but we're also meeting the needs of those clinicians that must work with those beneficiaries. I think one of, when I think about innovation, and from a clinician's perspective, one of my favorite examples of that and channel, how we manage the channel, is when we launched our physician payment program. And this program rewards high value, high quality Medicare clinicians with increases in their payment, while also reducing payment for those clinicians who aren't quite meeting the performance standards. So from the onset, we recognized that implementing this program was really going to require a different lens. It wasn't necessarily a popular one, and it was complex. So we used human-centered design to meet with the clinicians to find out what would be the best approach. We went to their meetings. I personally sat at their table where they served their bagels and coffee in the morning, and interrupted them and said, "Excuse me, you know, can you give me some information on this?" I think I understand that we were one of the first agencies to put wireframes in a regulation to actually get feedback on, here's the system we plan to build, what do you think about it? And so all of that, we were able to get different perspectives, prioritize the need of the users of our programs, and then incorporate that in our system design, but not only that, in our policy and our communications and in our training. So holistically, you have to make sure that that customer service thread and any innovations that you get out of that don't just stop with one thing, but go throughout the whole program.
I love that. I love the idea of sitting at the table where they get their breakfast and catching them and getting their thoughts. That's phenomenal. Commissioner Gooder, I'll pass it over to you. Same question, and if you have any responses to the other answers as well.
You know, it's interesting. There's so many kind of similarities, but the thing that a lot of people don't know about the trademark office or the registration of trademarks is you don't need a lawyer to do it. You frequently see that, and I think in the past we tended to look at who was coming into our system with a lawyer and who wasn't. But what we weren't seeing was what are the size of those customer groups. And one of the things we looked at about a year and a half ago was who are the owners of all these things. And what we found was that 76% of the owners had less than 10 trademark filings in their whole time. And half of that group, so about 36% or so, had one filing. That means individuals, really small businesses, et cetera, who were using the system with or without a lawyer. And so while we want to make sure that the professionals who use our systems, et cetera, it's easy for them, it's efficient, et cetera. Where we really had to focus, and I think the pandemic heightened a lot of this and accelerated, was how do these huge number of people who come in looking for something very important for their business, how can they navigate through what is essentially a completely legal process that creates rights for their company? And the thing is every company out there, not every company needs a patent. Every company has a name. So the more people engage in that, the better. And the huge surge of applications that came in during the pandemic, that proportion stayed the same. So that means even individuals, as rough as the economy was, were still coming in. And so what we had to do was make sure we redesigned all of the information areas that they would go to make sense out of this process, because it's not intuitive necessarily. Everybody knows what a trademark is. You see it, you encounter them every day, but registering it becomes a really different thing. And creating, one of the things that changed was we created a trademark basics boot camp. And because everything was virtual, we could now do it all over the country for groups. The attendance has been amazing. And but now the trick is, okay, how do you expand that to a broader audience from different groups, different needs, different, the growth in businesses, they all need that help. So now I think our focus now is more, it's more part of our mindset. I came from a background where we didn't change a thing on our brand unless we understood what consumers thought about it. And that kind of focus on the consumers now is more part of the conversation every day, not, oh yeah, we need to do it because we need a score on this, or we need to check that, or whatever.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it strikes me again, this commonality between all of you, which is a focus on truly listening to customers and actually getting their perspectives and their thoughts. Again, one of the elements from the report that we heard earlier, particularly because of the pandemic, but also just in general in this day and age, that can mean a lot of different things when you're talking to various different kinds of people, business owners, clinicians, service providers, everyday travelers. And I'm curious, sometimes that is going into community groups, sometimes that is going onto social media or going to professional settings. In general, when you talk about this approach that you've had, how have you made sure that it's been as successful as possible when you're going and approaching customers, listening to them, and what might you be trying to implement in the future for new ways to gather that sort of insight? And I'll start again with Dave, and then I'll just go in reverse order.
Well, for one thing, we need to ask more. We are asking more. So we're about to in fact, it publishes today a new piece of legislation that will help people cancel trademarks that are not being used. It's actually a big issue in the trademark ecosystem. But we went out asking the people in the trademark community, what is important to you, what isn't? And so starting the conversation earlier, rather than us figuring out what we think the law ought to do or the regulations ought to do, or what we think is the most efficient or best way to do it, start asking people sooner in the process, I think was the big lesson learned.
That's great. That's great. Jean?
So I think I mentioned the 6 pillars that our administrator published not too long ago, and the first one being equity. But the third pillar was really listening and engaging to our customers, our stakeholders, and others. Very important to the discussion is really engaging our partners and the communities we serve through policy and implementation. And the one way I think to be successful and to use what you've learned is to put it to action. If you consistently ask for comment, you go out and you listen, but your customers can't see that any change is being made as a result of what you're doing, then they quickly lose trust that you really are genuine in your ask. And so the expectation is that we embrace customer service with every touch that we have. And as far as the channels we use for the beneficiaries, we know that some prefer to read information provided in hard copy, some prefer an in-person telephone conversation. Other beneficiaries, including our seniors, because many people don't think this to be true, but they absolutely expect to receive information through digital means. And as noted in the report released today, we handle about 23.8 million calls in our call center, and wow, over 400 million visits to our website. Our marketplace just opened enrollment this month. And so what we did, learning from our experience, we have, to reach those that want the touch, we've quadrupled the navigator footprint. So there are people out there that can personally assist them. We've launched champions for coverage, who are 2,100 local organizations in the community. And while we have multiple in-person, as I mentioned, seniors like digital, I happen to, and you can tell I like to go out and experience myself what our customers are experiencing. When I was in a senior center, and we released what's called the What's Covered app. And it's just a simple tool that really makes information that's already on our website available on your smartphone. And I was in the senior center as they pulled up the app, and they were able to put in layman's terms something they wanted to inquire about to see if it was covered, what their out-of-pocket expense would be. And this was information already available, but repackaged in a way that was accessible to them. And they were just they were overjoyed with this ability. So I think putting it into action is important.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Jose, I'll pass it to you as well.
I couldn't agree more. 2 points. David had highlighted the kind of staying ahead of it. You've got to stay ahead of the curve. You've got to have agility. And I have to give credit to TSA's Public Affairs Office and the capabilities that they have developed through social media,
Mhm.
whether it be Twitter, Instagram. They have allowed us to remain engaged with what the traveling public is saying. Whereas, we're just not waiting for a passenger to call our TSA contact center with a concern. You see folks really expressing either their compliments or their concerns on the spot. That's the world that we're in. And so as it comes up and it's something that really concerns us, whether it was a positive feedback, negative feedback, we actually will go and reach out to that individual. We'll reply, we want to know more. That has given us that agility to not wait. You stay ahead of it, and you engage. And then working with that airport leadership team to get to root cause. And now that data really provides us a lot of information when we start to look at what's happening throughout the country in different regions. What are the root causes out there of what we're seeing? And then another great point, that Gene was highlighting. It's a lot of the successes that we have had recently has been because we've been able to listen and engage. We've got a large partnership of coalitions. LGBTQ plus, Latinx, disabilities, veterans, and we engage with them often. As a matter of fact, one of the concerns that they raised was, hey, TSA, you guys have initiated a good program with your passenger support specialists, for example. We call them PSSs, passenger support specialists. But we realized through listening to their concerns that I think some of these individuals receive additional training. You have to certify to become a passenger support specialist on top of your duty as an officer. We realized that we had to enhance the training. These coalition groups actually were invited to help us prepare the curriculum for our officers. They worked on that with our training and development office to ensure that we were obtaining that insight from them to better round off our passenger support specialists. And further, our administrator then said, we're going to make this a career progression requirement. If you're going to advance your career in TSA, you have to become certified as a passenger support specialist. Why? Because
That's great.
it's a need. You're going to engage many individuals in the public, and so that's just some examples of listening and then being agile.
That's phenomenal. I love the idea of making it a requirement in the career progression. We've got a question in the chat that I'm going to go ahead and pull in here, which is, obviously you all work with various other agencies, not just your own, but you also have a lot of partners that you work with on the outside, different airports, airlines, different care providers, different legal entities and businesses. And I just want to hear a little bit, how do you not only learn from one another and from agency to agency, but also how do you learn from partners worldwide, even other governments or private sector, academia? Would love to hear any examples you have from that on how you've engaged with those partners on the customer experience front. And I guess, Jose, I'll start with you and then we'll go around the robin.
Absolutely. We have, as some of you may know, and if you don't, TSA has a large international footprint and responsibility. We've got to make sure that our airport partners and foreign air carriers are complying with TSA requirements at last point of departure airports. So if any aircraft is going to fly directly into our country or over our airspace, we have to ensure that those security measures are being applied according to our regulations. And so having said that, we have, I was talking about the passenger journey automation, touchless capability. That really was an effort that involved several other countries. The UK, for example, was one. Many, actually two different countries in Asia that we engaged with as well to understand what they were looking at from a touchless capability. And we learned a lot of good information with regards to security algorithm development. What a threat may be here in the States may not be the same threat that for example, our colleagues in Japan are looking for. But most importantly, we also learn what did not work through many pilot programs and sharing information. A lot of that led to the development of our capabilities with CAT scan, CT, and X-ray scanning to reduce the amount of accessible property, your carry-on luggage that our officers have to open and go into. So developing the algorithms to be able to see these images and be able to slice through them in a checkpoint environment, not just in your checked baggage, but in a checkpoint environment that will allow our officers to see clearer and mitigate any threat. What does that equate to? Quicker process for the passenger as they're coming through the checkpoint. That's just one of many examples, Mark, that I think that's a good story for our engagement with other countries and coalition groups.
That's great. Jean?
Yeah, so I'll look at our engagement and collaboration with other agencies and what happens when you don't. Probably the best example, or most recent example that I can think of is our work during the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course is still in our midst. But I'll use the example of the nursing home. The nursing homes were hard hit with cases of COVID due to the nature of the congregational settings, healthcare settings, the multiple chronic conditions with the residents, other pre-existing issues, even pre-pandemic. And many relied on CMS for information. And that was, when I say many, it was the staff at the nursing homes, the residents, the family members, the caregivers, the advocates, vendors, and so many others. So early on, we realized the need for coordination and alignment, particularly with the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, but also the FDA and the NIH. CDC given the guidelines and then we doing the enforcement, we initially met daily and still meet frequently to coordinate our guidance because you had to have all of those stakeholders that I mentioned receiving consistent information. We work closely on issues of visitation, protective equipment, testing, vaccination, and many others. But one of the first orders of business when the pandemic started was to have a national reporting system to capture information specific to COVID-19, which was unprecedented and so didn't necessarily exist. So we had to work with so many of the agencies and CDC to bring up a system that normally would probably take 2 years in a couple of months. And it was essential for resource allocation. So residents and families knew what was going on in a facility. And we did work very closely. We were able to stand that up for the nursing homes. We learned a lot of lessons in the process that will, of course, help us as we move forward to the next event, which hopefully will not be a global event such as this. But it would not have been possible if we did not align.
Gotcha. And Commissioner Gooder.
Yeah, the only thing I'll touch on is trademarks, by the nature of what they are with businesses, tend to be things that people take with them to other countries to do business and sell, et cetera. So the experience of a trademark user, customer who is paying the fees for all this, becomes very relevant as to what their experience is when they land in Japan or China or Europe or whatever. So some years ago, there was started an organization called the TM5, and it's the historically 5 largest trademark offices in the world. And we meet twice a year and then in between to develop common projects to create common ways to do things that help streamline all this process for people, because there's nothing worse than having result A in this country and result B over here, and you can't, just the way commerce works and the way trademarks work, it's just so fundamentally, they should be consistent. But the thing that's coming out of that more often, I think, is more discussion about how do these things impact customers. And customers is not a word you hear used a lot amongst agencies in the IP world, and they tend to say stakeholders. And my view of that was, yeah, a stakeholder is one thing, but I think a customer is a little bit different. And we know that there are so many of them that are individuals and small, and they are actually shelling out money. That's no different. We're essentially a $500 million company that has customers in 200 countries. We have to think about that. And the TM5 is one way that helps us help our customers, but learn from them as well.
That's phenomenal. Commissioner David Gooder, Deputy Director Jean Moody Williams, Executive Director Jose Bonilla, thank you so much for joining us today. I could keep this conversation going for a long time, but I'll hand it over back to Lauren to continue the show. Thank you all so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much, Mark, for an incredible panel. We are now going to hear from a great friend to the customer experience community, Congressman Jerry Connolly, who is serving his 7th term in the U.S. House of Representatives from Virginia's 11th District. Just as a reminder to everyone, after this, we're going to have a fabulous keynote from Claire Martirana, Federal CIO. So please stick around during this video. I'm excited to turn it over to Congressman Connolly. Thanks so much.
Good morning, and thank you to the Partnership of Public Service and Accenture Federal Services for inviting me to join you all to discuss the importance of improving the customer experience with the federal government. Today's event comes at a time when government at all levels stands at what could be called an inflection point. A year and a half ago, at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, government had to quickly shift how it delivers services to the public. Agencies that invested in improving how they served their customers and updated their IT postures adapted well to delivering services in a more remote world. Other agencies struggled to adapt, causing severe gaps in some cases in access to digital services and undermining access to and receipt of federal public health and economic relief efforts. The pandemic laid bare the consequences of decades of deferred investment in customer experience and information technology, and we must not let the lessons learned during this crisis go to waste. Going forward, we must use this opportunity to ensure that the federal government is delivering equitable, accessible, and customer-centered services to its most important customer, the American people. The federal government collects a vast amount of information and has spent more than $90 billion a year on federal IT. We have no excuse for not delivering high-quality customer experience with that kind of investment. Furthermore, as private sector explore innovative and emerging technologies to address customer needs, the public should expect the same from its federal government. Federal agencies must adapt to the 21st century. And yet, according to the 2020 American Customer Satisfaction Index, the federal government ranks among the bottom of all industries in the United States in terms of customer satisfaction. Public trust in government remains near its historic low. As of April 2021, only 24% of individuals trust government in Washington to do what's right most of the time. These low scores are the result all too often of unintuitive government websites or obscure program eligibility requirements. Furthermore, current law makes it difficult for federal agencies to collect even basic feedback from customers in a timely manner. To provide efficient, effective, equitable, and high-quality services to our customers, agencies need better data to understand the barriers customers face and to develop the strategies that might remove them. This Congress, I was proud to introduce the Federal Agency Customer Experience Act, H.R. 4688, with my colleague, Representative Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. This bipartisan bill would enable certain public-facing agencies to collect feedback more efficiently on a customer's experience with public service or program. Such data will provide insights that will allow agencies to make iterative improvements to websites and customer service options in real time. And these improvements will evolve how government affects lives, removing the roadblocks that prevent individuals, families, and businesses from accessing critical government relief when they need it most. Government services should be human-centered and minimize complexity and administrative burdens and costs for the users, the American people. The FACE Act is a great first step in improving the federal customer experience, and there's always more work to be done. Lastly, as many of you joining us today know full well, state and local governments are on the front line of public services, often administering and distributing federally funded relief and benefits, especially during the pandemic. This Congress, I introduced the State and Local Digital Service Act, which authorizes $100 million for each fiscal year from 2022 through 2028 for state and local governments to form digital service teams focused on delivering fair, effective, and secure public services. I think the pandemic has again exposed the weaknesses at the state and local levels that we must address if we're going to improve customer service. I look forward to working with my colleagues here in Congress, as well as with the administration, to meet federal customer expectations and drive government operations into the 21st century, all on behalf of the people we serve, our constituents. Thank you, and please stay safe.
All right, as always, Congressman Connolly is a great friend to the CX community. Finally, as the closing highlight of our event today, I am so delighted to introduce a customer experience champion and our keynote of the day. Claire Martirana is the federal CIO, and she has, for all of her career, worked to improve and simplify digital experiences for people when they interact with businesses and government. Claire has been an incredible advocate for customer experience practices, and particularly during the Biden administration has highlighted so many opportunities to improve the technology and tools around federal customer experience. So I'm going to turn it over to her in just a moment for her remarks, but just as a reminder to everyone, after her remarks, we'll have time for a few questions and answers. Please use the Q&A function if you can at the bottom of your screen. If you can't, feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll include those at the end of the conversation. And as a reminder, you can be part of the conversation on Twitter at GovCX2021. Claire, I will now turn it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and thank you to the partnership for welcoming me to here today as you roll out your annual Government for the People report. Following Congressman Connolly is exciting because we are all working together on the same thing. Improving customer experience is just about my favorite subject, and having the opportunity to talk to you all today about what we can deliver for the American people is extremely exciting. So first, I want to begin by thanking all of you for what you've done over the last almost 2 years. Whether you're a federal employee, a contractor, or a member of a good government organization, to be honest, it has been a challenging time, balancing our lives and the well-being of our families and those we care about during COVID-19. While we fast forwarded to remote environment virtually overnight, it has been a lot. I'm proud to report that across government, we really rose to the occasion in many ways. We partnered across organizations, and bureaucracy busted through some cumbersome processes and procedures to deliver. Pivoting and innovating rapidly, we accomplished things in days versus weeks, months, or sometimes even years. It's important to recognize where we've been, celebrate what we've accomplished, and take a minute to look ahead. So today, I'm asking you to pause on the urgent, the many, many front burner day-to-day issues you're dealing with today, right now, and give yourself permission to think about what's possible. As we move forward as a federal government, it's important to note some hard truths. Our favorite customer brands have certainly accelerated their service delivery during the pandemic. Our customers have noticed, and they're enjoying the improved experience. So their expectations for us and our ability to deliver an experience on par with their favorite brands has increased too. And there's no going back to the way it was. We're in a moment that requires bold thinking. We're in a moment that requires us not only to think differently, but to work together differently. So I'd like to ask you to humor me. Just take 30 seconds along with me and imagine. Think about your department or agency or organization. If you could wave a magic wand and improve service delivery, improve something that would positively impact the lives of millions of your customers, what would it be? What's your headline? What achievement would you love to deliver for your customers? Write it down. Now ask yourself, what would need to happen for that headline to be true? Who would you need to influence? Who would you need to get on your side? I'm here to tell you that your customers are depending on you to be thinking like this. And here's the great news. We can achieve your headline by doing a tactic that I have used many times in my career, is by working backwards to identify the people and processes and investment needed to create momentum. I'm a real momentum junkie, and I have realized across government that you can achieve your headline oftentimes with your current technology and in less times than you might imagine. And you have my full support in trying to think this way and challenge yourself and challenge your organizations to think this way. So here are some actions we can take right now to begin creating that momentum on behalf of our customers. Frankly, we need to operate as one team for one America. I was honored to be appointed by President Biden to be the federal CIO, and I view the federal government through an enterprise lens, because across government, with everyone I work with, many of us are working really hard to solve the exact same problems. Many people have call centers. Many people are trying to determine how to use appropriate measurement for customer satisfaction. Many people are trying to digitize the customer experience. We are all working hard to solve the same problems. Before we can accelerate digital modernization across government to deliver that exceptional customer experience to the American people, we must ensure that every agency and department is aligned to an enterprise cybersecurity and IT modernization plan. And let's not forget, as the country's largest employer and buyer of goods, we have an opportunity to improve the customer experience, including accessibility for our teams and staff by leveraging this power. Improving CX for federal employees will also improve our service delivery for the American people. So your customers are multifaceted, both internal customers and the American people. So having an enterprise mindset will really help expedite this transformation, because it's technology that underpins our ability to deliver safe and secure customer experience. And as you've heard me say before, cybersecurity is the ultimate team sport. It is a job of every one of us to be united in our efforts and united in our purpose to protect our systems, our data, and services that we manage on behalf of the American people. If we don't start there, really nothing else matters. When we are aligned on this enterprise cybersecurity and IT modernization plan, we become a stronger, more secure federal enterprise. We can connect our systems, processes, and policies to ensure our customers can move within and across agencies seamlessly. And we've reduced the unimaginable administrative burden we place on our federal workforce. It's heartbreaking to witness the workarounds our federal employees have to undertake to serve our customers. And it's our job to end the silos of excellence across government and give them the modern service delivery operating environment that they deserve. We also need to identify our customers, meet them where they are, and put them at the center of everything we do. And when we do that, when we put them at the center of everything we do, we know who our customers are through an intuitive authentication process. We could welcome them through a single front door. We would know what they need because we design our services with them. We meet them where they are, in person, on the phone, online, and deliver services with the highest accessibility standards that people of all backgrounds and abilities can access, whether they're urban or rural, young or old, with or without a difference in abilities, whether they're tech savvy or tech novice. We are all here to serve our citizens and treat them with the dignity and respect they deserve when interacting with our government. And we need to ensure that we don't leave anyone behind. We will deliver the benefit, service, or information they are seeking in plain language. We will give them an exceptional customer experience. And when we're able to deliver for our citizens, we build that trust. We show our workforce what's possible, and we deliver services on par with our customer's favorite brand and bring an enormous sense of pride to our workforce. And we need to show and not tell, using demos, not memos. One of the greatest lessons I learned from my time at the US Digital Service and from my colleagues was that we have to show and not tell. We have to show our federal partners what's possible through minimally viable products and those MVPs and demos, and not just more policy documents and memos. When we show and not tell, we gain support, we gain traction, we gain trust, we create that momentum. And we prove that by making investments in this way, we can really work together to deliver a truly impactful service experience. And candidly, it helps us inspire the next generation to join us in serving the American people. So we the people, it means you and me. No one else is coming. It's up to us. We are the mission critical drivers for this change. And the risks we've taken over the past 2 years have really shown what's possible. As a former federal CIO, I can tell you, I understand the competing things you're all asked to do, often without additional people or resources. But what I can tell you is if we work differently across our organizations, bring the C-suite into the conversations, orient our work around the customer journey, we have what we need to make significant progress. We just need a different mindset and belief that it's possible, and an unwillingness to go further and further without making these adjustments. I truly believe it's possible. I'll work side by side with all of you, blocking and tackling along the way to show others we can do this. So I am asking you to join me in delivering a modern customer experience for our citizens. And I know by working together, we can do this. We've got this. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Claire, thank you so much. I am now motivated. I'm going to hop on USA.gov after this and put in my application to join you on this journey. So I love your remarks, were incredible and inspiring. Your point around how government for the people, there's no one else. This is us. This is why we're here. You had a quote in some of your remarks you did a few weeks ago. I think this is at ACT IAC. And what you said was, when we don't meet their expectations, the people's expectations, it actually undermines their trust in government. We undermine trust both in our competence and the extent to which we understand and care about those in need of our service. And that was putting it so strikingly to me. But I wanted to hear from you, building on the themes of your remarks, if you could offer advice to agency leaders on that point about not meeting customer expectations, how it undermines trust, what would your advice be to them and how to elevate this mission so that it's part of what they do at the center of their work?
Yeah, I would say you have to roll up your sleeves and really listen to your customers. You know, the times that I have been the most highly motivated are when I have done user research and listened in on the calls, listened to an exasperated veteran, oftentimes breaking down and crying. grown men and women, heartbroken and frustrated and angry and despondent. I have heard retirees, when I worked at OPM, dialing any phone number, trying to get a human on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, it motivated me more than any strategic plan, an important meeting, and all of the things that we do in our environments to get aligned and try and create progress. Hearing someone just so disheartened and just asking for help, common things. I was on the phone with a woman at VA, at OPM on my third week there, and she had lost her husband. She'd never done any of the family bookkeeping. He was a federal employee for 40 years. She didn't know if she was going to keep getting paid. She had very basic questions, but she was unable to get through to her call center because she kept getting a busy signal. And I spent 45 minutes on the phone with her, unable to answer her basic questions, but I could listen. And every time I ran into roadblocks about our call center or things we didn't have funding for or challenges, I just kept going back to that woman and that voice in my head of, she could be my mom, she could be my aunt, she could be my friend, my neighbor. And there are hundreds of her out there. And I really took it seriously that I wanted to be the person that didn't just, hang up the phone and go on to my calendar and see what next meetings I had. I really wanted to take it to heart and share it with my employees because they felt equally as passionate as I did about this. So I think it's sharing with each other what is not acceptable and then working together from the C-suite to your developers to see how you can bureaucracy bust and try and create solutions.
We heard that so often in our research, that important part of storytelling, that it's not just stating the principles, those are important, we need to agree on those, but the storytelling of what it actually means. I loved your point about demos, not memos. That's such a great way to get that across. We have a question from one of the folks in the audience that I'm going to build on. He asks about how customer experience execution is something the private sector has focused on for a long time. We learn from them all the time in the federal space. He says that there's a lot of commercial off-the-shelf technologies that solve customer experience problems that agencies face. He'd love to hear your views, and I'm sure you've got some things to say on this, on how we in government can thoughtfully leverage proven tools to help fulfill our most common CX gaps. So that's his question, but let me offer my small amendment because this is something you've mentioned before. So whenever I get on Google, I can use my Google logon everywhere. There's all kinds of places they're like, hey, would you like to log on via Google? Yes, that makes it so much easier. And you and others have talked about the concept of that federal front door, that ability to log on in one spot, and then that carries over, whether it be IRS or my student loans or elsewhere. Is that going to be a possibility someday? Can we get there? I know that there's been experiments in this space, but I would love to see that reality.
Yeah, I think the best of government is a partnership between the private sector and government. There are so many private sector companies are well out ahead of where we are in the federal government. But we do have circumstances where we do have unique missions, and we do need to think about equity and accessibility and the depth and breadth of the customer journey in navigating multiple agency environments, for example. So sometimes it is a little bit hard to not solve a problem, a technical problem using great private sector technology in one agency, but then making sure that we have the contracting vehicles to be able to use it across a journey. So I think that is where we are really going to continue to lean into shared services, using the best private sector tools and services that are available in the marketplace and utilizing them in this unique government environment. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to be working really in partnership.
One final question for you, and I really appreciated the responses you've given us today. One of the things that we talked about in our report is that government's relationship with the public is not just about one transaction or a touch point or a single logon or a call. It's a long-term relationship, and this is necessary to build over time. How do you think, what are some of the best advice you could offer to the folks we have in our audience about how to build that long-term relationship, how to think through what is necessary for government to work with customers, not just in a moment, but over their journey and really over their lifetime?
Yeah, Lauren, that's a really great question. One of the things that we are thinking about are all of those unique journeys that we go on as the public and as citizens. So we are creating these moments that matter, and then these life experiences that really carry through across the federal enterprise. So a really incredible group of folks that I have had the opportunity to work with in the U.S. Digital Service that now are in federal agencies all over government have been throwing around some ideas about those life experiences. And somebody came up with a great experience for us to think about of turning 18. What happens when you turn 18? What's that civic engagement like when you turn 18? I think we're trying to think of this, right? When a child is born, they have certain interactions with the government, state and local level, but on the federal side, you get a social security number. What are all of those life experiences and moments that travel through so that we really think about our customer journey as a longitudinal journey, right? You're having touch points, turning 18, maybe thinking about going to school, exploring educational possibilities, maybe student loans, registering to vote, all of those really key things that you get to think about. You might join military service when you turn 18. You have an opportunity. How do we think about that? And then how do we carry that through all the way through, you're turning 65. What does that matter, right? How do you interact with your government as you're thinking about retiring? What are all those options? So we're really trying to think about all of those life experiences, tie them all together, share experiences among agencies so that it is not just deep learning about the veteran journey at the VA. They have really been leaders in this space and share so widely with other agencies their customer experience learning. Almost 30% of federal employees are veterans. So veterans not only dealing with the VA, but also as federal employees. So I think just benefiting from the numerous ways that the federal government learns, listens, and has the opportunity to deliver really exceptional experiences. But as I said, this is one team, one dream. Like this has to be Team America for us to break out of those silos and think about our customers in this longitudinal, holistic way. And I think the time is ripe. We have so many people convening around this thought. I'm just really excited to see what we're going to get done in the next year.
I join you in that excitement and will be cheerleading and helping along the way as much as we can here at the partnership with our partners at Accenture. Thank you so much, Claire, for joining us today. This was great. Everyone, if you walk away with nothing else, demos, not memos. What a great way to remind people about what we're trying to communicate here. I want to thank Kathy Conrad, our incredible partner at Accenture, all of the folks who contributed to the customer experience report in agencies around the federal government. At the partnership, Nadia, Liz, Ife, Kara, Andrew, Tim, Austin, Halea, and a cast of other characters. You've been an incredible support on this. Everyone in the audience, please read our report, share with your friends, family, colleagues, and let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. And finally, if you've learned something today, if you want to give us some feedback, we've got a survey that we have posted in the chat here and we'll send around afterward. You've been an incredible audience and we are so grateful to have this incredible community of customer experience experts and advocates that work with us to help put this together. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and I hope you will give us some feedback on our report and let us know what else we should be studying next. Everyone, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.